Welcome to the Rupture. Today we are diving deep into one of the most unforgettable television moments that the internet simply refuses to forget. This is the story of when two completely different worlds collided on live television, and the aftermath left everyone speechless. We are talking about the moment when the legendary Dolly Parton, the living definition of grace, kindness, and southern charm, walked onto the set of The View and found herself cornered by none other than Joy Behar. Now, if you have watched The View even once, you already know that the show thrives on drama, on uncomfortable questions, and on pushing guests to their emotional limits. Joy Behar has built her entire career on being the outspoken, no-filter host who asks what everyone else is too afraid to ask. She is known for making guests squirm, for creating those awkward pauses that make for great television, and for never backing down from a heated exchange. But this time, something was different. This time, she was sitting across from a woman who has spent decades building a legacy of love, positivity, and unwavering class. And what happened next was something that nobody could have predicted. When Dolly Parton walked onto that stage, the energy in the room was electric. She was glowing, wearing one of her signature sparkling outfits, her hair perfectly done, and that warm, infectious smile that has made her beloved by millions around the world. The studio audience erupted in applause because that is the effect Dolly has on people. She is not just a country music icon, she is a cultural treasure, a symbol of resilience and kindness. Everyone expected a light-hearted conversation, maybe some jokes, maybe some stories about her music career, her philanthropy, or her famous theme park. The mood was cheerful, the hosts were smiling, and it seemed like just another feel-good interview. But then, the tone shifted. It started subtly at first, with Joy Behar leaning in and asking a question that felt just a little too personal, a little too pointed. And if you have been watching The Rupture for a while, you know that when Joy starts leaning in like that, something is about to go down. She has a particular way of phrasing things that sounds innocent on the surface but carries a sharp edge underneath. And that is exactly what happened here. The question itself was designed to catch Dolly off guard. It was one of those questions that you do not ask someone unless you are deliberately trying to create tension. Joy probed into a topic that was clearly uncomfortable, something that touched on a sensitive aspect of Dolly's personal life and career. The entire studio fell silent because everyone knew that this was a moment of truth. Would Dolly laugh it off the way she usually does? Would she deflect with one of her famous witty one-liners? Or would she finally push back? The camera zoomed in on Dolly's face, capturing every micro-expression, every tiny flicker of emotion. For a brief second, that signature smile flickered. It was just a fraction of a moment, but the audience felt it. You could see a shift in her eyes, a quiet intensity that replaced the usual warmth. And in that instant, everyone realized that this was not going to be a typical Dolly Parton interview. Something was brewing beneath the surface, and it was about to explode. As the silence stretched on, Dolly took a slow, deliberate breath. She did not rush to respond. She did not fidget or look away. She just held her composure with a grace that only someone with decades of experience in the entertainment industry possesses. And then, in a voice that was softer than usual but carried an undeniable weight, she spoke. Her words were measured, calm, but there was an edge to them that cut through the tension like a knife. She told Joy Behar that she had come to the show with love and respect, that she had always been a guest who cherished the opportunity to connect with audiences. But then she delivered the line that changed everything. She warned Joy that if she continued to push and cross boundaries, then this would be her very last appearance on the show, and more importantly, she told her that she would regret her attitude. She said it in a way that was so composed, so dignified, that it did not sound like a threat. It sounded like a promise. It sounded like a final warning from someone who had had enough. The moment those words left Dolly's lips, you could hear a pin drop in that studio. The audience gasped, not with shock, but with something closer to vindication. It was as if they had been waiting for someone to finally put a check on Joy Behar's aggressive interviewing style. Joy tried to recover. She let out a forced laugh, that nervous kind of laugh that people use when they have been caught off guard and are desperately trying to regain control. But it was too late. Everyone saw the crack in her armor. Everyone saw that for once, she was the one who had been silenced. She tried to say something back, but her words stumbled out awkwardly. There was no witty retort, no clever comeback. She was completely and utterly shut down. And that is what made this moment so iconic. It was not a loud, screaming argument. It was not a dramatic walk-off or a physical confrontation. It was pure, unadulterated class. Dolly Parton did not lower herself to Jay's level. She did not raise her voice or lose her temper. She simply reminded her and everyone watching that dignity and self-respect are far more powerful than any cheap shot or provocative question. Now, let us take a moment to reflect on why this moment resonated so deeply with millions of viewers around the world. It is because we have all been there. We have all encountered someone like Joy Behar in our own lives, someone who pushes boundaries, who says things under the guise of being honest or real, but who ultimately just enjoys making others uncomfortable. And most of the time, we do not know how to respond. We freeze. We laugh it off. We let them get away with it because we do not want to cause a scene. But Dolly Parton showed us a different way. She showed us that you can stand your ground without compromising your values. She showed us that boundaries are not just okay to set, they are necessary. And she did it all with a level of elegance that left the other person speechless. Let us go even deeper into the psychology of what happened that day. Joy Behar, for all her experience, made a critical error. She underestimated her guest. She assumed that because Dolly is known for her sweetness and her willingness to laugh at herself, she could be pushed around without any resistance. That is a classic miscalculation that people make when they confuse kindness with weakness. Dolly Parton has survived decades in an industry that is notoriously brutal, especially for women. She has navigated sexism, ageism, and relentless scrutiny, and she has come out on top every single time. She did not achieve that level of success by being a pushover. She achieved it by knowing exactly who she is and refusing to let anyone define her worth. So when Joy tried to back her into a corner, she was not dealing with some fragile celebrity who would crumble under pressure. She was dealing with a woman who has built an empire on her own terms, a woman who has faced far bigger challenges than a rude question on a talk show. And that is precisely what made the warning so effective. Dolly did not need to raise her voice or threaten Joy in any overt way. She simply stated a fact. She made it clear that she had the power to walk away, and that she was not afraid to use it. In the world of television, a guest threatening to never return is a huge deal. Shows like The View rely on high-profile guests to draw viewers. Losing someone like Dolly Parton would be a significant blow, not just to the show's ratings, but to its credibility. Joy knew that, and that is why she froze. She realized in that moment that she had overplayed her hand. She had tried to create a viral moment at Dolly's expense, but instead, she had created a viral moment that exposed her own flaws. The irony is almost poetic. What happened after that moment was just as interesting. The show tried to move on, but the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. The other hosts looked visibly uncomfortable, unsure of how to steer the conversation back to safer waters. Joy was clearly rattled, and her subsequent questions lacked their usual punch. Dolly, however, was completely unbothered. She went back to her warm, charming self as if nothing had happened, but the damage was already done. The internet exploded within minutes. Clips of that warning went viral across every social media platform. People were praising Dolly for her bravery, her poise, and her refusal to be a doormat. Memes started circulating, podcasts discussed it, and even late-night talk shows commented on the interaction. It became one of those rare television moments that transcended the show itself and entered pop culture history. And here is the thing about Dolly Parton's warning. It was not just directed at Joy Behar on that specific day. It was a lesson for all of us. It was a reminder that we do not have to tolerate disrespect just because someone has a platform or a microphone. It was a message that kindness does not mean weakness, and that even the gentlest souls have a breaking point. Dolly's career has been defined by her ability to rise above the noise, to focus on her craft, to spread joy, and to help others. She has never been one to engage in petty feuds or public drama. But that day, she drew a line in the sand, and she made it clear that even she has limits. And the fact that she delivered that message so flawlessly is what cemented her status as a true icon. Now, let us talk about the aftermath and the ripple effects of that single moment. For days after the episode aired, Joy Behar faced intense backlash. Fans of Dolly flooded social media with support, and many called for Joy to apologize. Critics of The View pointed out how the show's format often encourages toxic behavior, and they praised Dolly for calling it out in real time. Even some of Joy's colleagues were rumored to have distanced themselves from the controversy, not wanting to be associated with the negative publicity. But beyond the drama, what stood out was how Dolly never once badmouthed Joy in any follow-up interview or public appearance. She did not fan the flames. She did not appear on other shows to gloat about her victory. She simply moved on, letting the moment speak for itself. That, too, is a lesson in class. She made her point, she protected her dignity, and then she went back to doing what she does best, making beautiful music and spreading love. The irony in all of this is that Joy Behar probably thought she was being edgy and entertaining. She probably believed that her question would generate buzz and make for great television. And in a way, she was right. It did generate buzz, just not in the way she intended. Instead of making Dolly look uncomfortable, she ended up exposing her own toxic tendencies to the entire world. Instead of coming across as a fearless journalist, she came across as someone who had finally met her match. And that is the beauty of moments like these. They remind us that authenticity and integrity will always win over manufactured controversy. They remind us that when you try to tear someone down, you often end up revealing more about yourself than about the other person. As the credits rolled on that episode, the studio audience gave Dolly a standing ovation. It was not just an appreciation for her music or her career, it was a celebration of her strength. It was a thank you from everyone who had ever been in a similar situation and wished they had the courage to speak up like she did. The cameras caught a few audience members wiping away tears, because this was an emotional moment. It was a moment that validated the quiet strength that so many of us carry inside but rarely get to express. And it was a moment that reminded us all that we are worthy of respect, no matter how famous or powerful the other person may be. Looking back now, it is clear that Dolly Parton's final warning to Joy Behar was not just a television moment, it was a cultural milestone. It sparked conversations about boundaries, about respect, about the dynamics of power in media, and about the importance of standing up for oneself. It became a reference point for people discussing toxic work environments, difficult relationships, and the art of responding with grace under pressure. And it elevated Dolly even further in the eyes of her fans, who already adored her for her philanthropy and her authentic personality. There is something deeply poetic about the way it all unfolded. Joy Behar, known for her sharp tongue and aggressive interviews, was rendered speechless by a soft-spoken country singer from Tennessee. Dolly, who has faced countless challenges in her life, from poverty to sexism to health scares, showed that her resilience is not just about surviving, it is about thriving. She taught us that you can be fierce without being cruel, that you can be strong without being loud, and that you can set boundaries without burning bridges. Now, let us consider the broader implications of this moment in the context of television history. Talk shows have always been a battleground for power dynamics. The host is supposed to be in control, steering the conversation, extracting juicy sound bites, and keeping the audience entertained. But every now and then, a guest comes along who flips the script entirely. Dolly Parton did exactly that. She reminded everyone that the guest is not just a puppet for the host to manipulate. The guest has agency, power, and a voice of their own. And when that voice is backed by decades of respect and admiration from the public, it carries more weight than any microphone in the studio. That is why this moment has endured in the collective memory of pop culture fans. It was not just a clash of personalities, it was a clash of philosophies. Joy Behar represents a certain kind of aggressive, confrontational media style that prioritizes conflict over connection. Dolly Parton represents the opposite. She prioritizes empathy, understanding, and mutual respect. When these two worldviews collided, it was inevitable that one would emerge victorious. And in this case, the victory went to the one who refused to sacrifice her values for the sake of entertainment. And so, As we conclude this deep dive into one of television's most iconic confrontations, we are left with a question that lingers in the air. What would you have done if you were in Dolly's shoes? Would you have laughed it off? Would you have walked off the set? Or would you have delivered your own version of that final warning? The answer to that question says a lot about who you are as a person. Because in the end, life is full of moments where we have to choose between being liked and being respected. Dolly Parton chose respect, and she did so without sacrificing an ounce of her warmth. That is why she remains one of the most beloved figures in entertainment history, and that is why this moment will never be forgotten. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where someone tries to push you beyond your limits, remember Dolly Parton. Remember her calm voice, her steady gaze, and her unshakable confidence. Remember that you have the power to say enough is enough, and you can do it with class. You do not need to shout or fight or throw a tantrum. You just need to know your worth and be willing to walk away if that worth is not respected. That is the ultimate lesson from this whole incident. The beauty of this story is that it continues to inspire new conversations every single day. People still share clips of that moment, still debate its significance, and still look up to Dolly as a role model for how to handle conflict with poise. And as the years go by, the legend of that warning only grows stronger. It has become one of those stories that parents tell their children, that mentors tell their students, that friends tell each other when they need a boost of courage. It is a story about the power of words, the importance of boundaries, and the undeniable strength that comes from staying true to who you are. In the end, Joy Behar continued with her career, and Dolly Parton continued with hers, but that moment remains frozen in time, a testament to the fact that sometimes the quietest voices speak the loudest. And if you are watching this and feeling inspired, if you are feeling that little spark of courage inside you, then we have done our job here at the Rupture. Because our goal is not just to entertain you, but to empower you. To show you that the world is full of moments where ordinary people become extraordinary simply by standing their ground. Dolly Parton did that for all of us, and we are forever grateful. So, what do you think about this whole situation? Do you think Joy Behar deserved that warning? Do you think Dolly handled it perfectly, or would you have done something different? We want to hear your thoughts, your stories, your own experiences with setting boundaries. Because every time you share your voice, you add another layer to this ongoing conversation about respect and dignity. And who knows, maybe your story will inspire someone else the way Dolly's story inspired you. That is the beautiful ripple effect of moments like these. They do not just end when the cameras stop rolling, they live on in our hearts and minds, shaping how we see the world and how we treat one another. And let us not forget the production side of this moment. The way the cameras captured every angle, the way the sound design amplified the silence, the way the editing later framed the confrontation for maximum impact. Television production is an art form, and in that moment, every single element came together perfectly. The lighting dimmed slightly as Dolly leaned forward. The background music, which had been light and playful, faded into almost nothing. The audience, who had been clapping and laughing just moments before, became completely still. It was as if the entire world held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. And when Dolly delivered her warning, the release of tension was palpable. That is the magic of live television. You never know what is going to happen, and when something does happen, it becomes a piece of history. Imagine being in that control room, watching the monitors, seeing the numbers spike as viewers tuned in to witness the unfolding drama. The producers probably had mixed feelings. On one hand, they were getting incredible content that would generate headlines for weeks. On the other hand, they were watching one of their own hosts get utterly dismantled by a guest. It was a moment of reckoning for the entire show, and it forced everyone involved to ask some difficult questions about the culture they had created. Was the show too focused on conflict? Had they crossed a line that should not have been crossed? And most importantly, would this incident change the way they approached future interviews? As for Dolly, she walked off that stage with her head held high, knowing that she had handled the situation with perfection. She did not need to say anything else. She did not need to explain herself or justify her reaction. The warning stood on its own, powerful and unambiguous. And in the days that followed, she continued to receive outpouring of support from fans, celebrities, and even politicians. It was a unifying moment in a world that often feels deeply divided. People from all walks of life, all political backgrounds, all age groups, came together to praise Dolly for her courage and her class. That is the kind of impact that only a true icon can have. Now, let us fast forward to the present day. The memory of that moment has not faded. It is still discussed on social media, still referenced in articles, still used as a teaching example for young journalists and media professionals. It has become a case study in how to handle difficult interviews, how to maintain your composure under pressure, and how to use your voice effectively without resorting to aggression. Dolly Parton may not have planned to deliver a masterclass in communication that day, but that is exactly what she did. And that is why we are here today, talking about it on the Rupture. Because these moments matter. They shape our culture, they influence our behavior, and they remind us of the values we hold dear. Dolly Parton's final warning to Joy Behar was not just a moment of television gold, it was a moment of truth. It exposed the cracks in the media landscape and offered a blueprint for a better way forward. It showed us that you can stand up to bullies without becoming one yourself. It showed us that silence can be more powerful than noise. And it showed us that grace, when combined with conviction, is unstoppable. So, as we wrap up this extensive deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought. The next time you face a challenging situation, a difficult conversation, or a person who tries to diminish you, think of Dolly Parton. Think of how she held her ground. Think of how she spoke her truth without anger. Think of how she walked away with her dignity intact. And then do the same. Because at the end of the day, that is what truly matters. Not the applause, not the views, not the viral clips. It is the knowledge that you stayed true to yourself, that you did not let anyone define you, and that you stood tall in the face of adversity. That is the legacy of Dolly Parton. That is the lesson we carry with us. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of television's most unforgettable moments. This has been The Rupture, and we will see you in the next one. Until then, remember to always value yourself, to never let anyone make you feel small, and to carry your own brand of grace into every room you enter. Because in the end, that is what truly makes you legendary. Stay strong, stay kind, and stay true. We will see you very soon.